those failures, all those learning lessons learned led you to say, you know what? I'm going to start writing children's books.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
what was that
yeah.
like? What, did people go, you're doing what now?
Yeah.
Or were they like, oh, that sounds right?
Well, so this, so writing children's books actually came from, I was writing a lot of industry papers and articles in the industry. Um, and I thought there's got to be a better way to help people understand what I'm doing, because when I would write, my writing style, of course, in the industry, it's very technical. And so a lot of big words, a lot of diagrams, a lot of, spatial theory going into play.
And now you have to go down to 2 syllables.
Yeah. And realized that the audience for those papers were basically guys like me, men and women like me in the industry that understood the lingo. And so I took a page from Warren Buffett, who said, if I can't explain something simply, I don't invest in it. And I went, perfect. So, I started early in my career trying to find ways to explain very simply the concepts I was trying to teach people about investing. And I started coming up with anecdotes or stories, and being growing up in the South, it kind of came quite naturally for me. I could spin a yarn with the best of them, they say. And I started using stories to teach, and the story stuck with people. And that's, I wrote a book for salespeople about 11, 12 years ago, that it was unique in its kind. It was very industry specific. It was focused on people that did wholesaling of financial securities products. Mm-hmm. And then I said, you know what? I think I could do better. So I wrote another book called The Emperor's Dilemma, which is a business fable. And that actually won an award. It got second place in the San Francisco Book Festival back in 2011. But it was more of an adult children's story. And that's what got me thinking. I was like going, okay, this business fable, a lot of people remember the story. They don't remember where they heard it, but they remember the story and they remember the details of it. And I went, okay, I think I need to reduce the age of my audience. I think if I could do for more children what my grandmother and grandfather did for me, mm-hmm. explaining to me in the way that a child learns, through stories, through storytelling, bedtime stories, whatever it was, that I think I could get this to stick and start creating more opportunities for our youth to get positive feedback, to see that they can make mistakes and have trial and error and succeed and be okay, and that you don't have to be a child prodigy at the age of 6 years old, because not everybody's going to be a child prodigy. Not everybody's going to play, in the National Hockey League in Canada, nor are they going to play in the National Football League in the United States, or the FIFA in Europe. They're not going to, not every kid that loves to play soccer is going to make it to that level. Right. But there are things that they can learn at a young age to help them further their lives and be more successful. And so the books kind of started from lecturing in the business arena to high school and college students and to professionals. Mm-hmm. And I just started telling stories. And pretty soon I got to be one of the more popular people to speak at a lot of the conferences that I went to, because I spent most of my time telling stories with a purpose behind it, kind of like Aesop's fables, as it were. There was a method to my madness. And so now the stories that I'm telling, like this one that, in fact, here, I knew I had one, like this one, ta-da! Pablo, the plate painter of Mazatlan. I don't know if you can see that very well, but that came about because, I was in Mexico and I saw this guy painting and was fascinated with how quick he painted and how good he was. And pretty soon, people would come by the table and he would say, yeah, well, is there something special you want? And they would go, oh, well, could you paint me laying on the beach? Could you paint me parasailing? Could you paint me hiking? He goes, sure. And he would whip it out in no time flat. And I thought, wow, Okay, now that's not a skill he learned overnight.
Yeah.
So I was there on vacation for about a week, and I went by every single day that he was there, waited till he was done towards the end of the day, and I would start asking him questions because I was inquisitive. I've always been naturally curious. And he told me his story. And he told me about growing up in a small village, and his family didn't have much, and he enjoyed art and, painting and drawing, and his, mom introduced him to a teacher, and that teacher instructed him over years, and over his lifetime, he became this individual. And I was starting to calculate how much he was making a day in Mexico. And this is clear back in the 1980s. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy, the equivalent today would be several $100,000 a year, that he was making in Mexico painting plates for tourists, and I thought, unbelievable. Here is a global success story, someplace that people may not necessarily think that there would be success. And yet this man has created a wonderful life for him and his family. He's, I lost track of him, but I'm sure he's probably no longer with us now. I mean, he was rather elderly when I met him, but here's an individual that took something that he enjoyed doing and created a life for himself and taught others, And so I said, there's a story there. So I started telling the story when I would speak at high school and college events back in the 80s. And I thought this would make a really good children's story. So after I wrote the business fable, I went, I think I could write children's stories. Cool. And I started writing children's stories, and my first children's story has met with far more success than I ever thought it would. I mean, it hasn't sold a tremendous amount because it's only been out for a very short period of time. But the industry accolades have been staggering. It's very humbling. And we've already got another one in the works, a Christmas story for next year. We hope to have done, and hopefully a series after that. But again, I failed an awful lot before I ever wrote a good one. So,